Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Deconstructing Leftists. Today, I'm going to be spending some more time deconstructing Brandon over at Mindshift. And I've been doing this is actually, I think, the third time that I've been doing a video based on something that he said. But there was a video I was watching of his. Actually, it was not just one, I've seen about three of his videos over the last week. And he said something that really stood out to me on the last one of his videos that I had not noticed before. In the past, Brandon has said that it was tough for him leaving the faith because that the people around him are all Christians. And it was tough for him because I guess his family and his friends are people that he has known for years and they're still believers and he's not. And, back when he first said that, a lot of the different atheists that I've encountered have had similar things they've said concerning the people that they're around. They've said that the people that are around them are still believers, even though they left the faith. And one of the thoughts I had in that, well, isn't it kind of interesting that as smart as they think they are, that they aren't even convincing the people that are immediately around them, that they can't even convince them. And that they have been hearing the same arguments that we're hearing when we watch his program. They've heard all of his different things he said about why God is not real. But yet they don't win much of anybody from their immediate circles. Matter of fact, I know they've been doing these deconstruction videos on YouTube for at least the last 3 to 4 years because I've been watching them that long. And when I tried to trace the roots of the actual deconstruction movement, when it was being called deconstruction, there's been people converting to Christianity and away from it all the time. But the actual deconstruction movement, I've been able to trace it back to around 2019 when it really, the phrase started really getting out there, being called that. So I know it's been around several years, and they have been all over YouTube. And yet, what are the latest stats that I've been able to find about atheism? I've heard atheists claiming early on, they were saying, well, it's just spreading like wildfire. Well, not so much. Atheism has been holding steady at about 4% of the U.S. population. And if you want to include agnostics into the count, it's 9%, as opposed to, it was 68% last time I checked, of Americans who identify themselves as Christians. Now, when I say Christians, that doesn't mean all evangelical Christians like I am. Doesn't mean that they all believe 100% in inerrancy of the Holy Bible and they're all King James only like I am. It doesn't mean that, but it means that they believe in Jesus Christ. And that's whether they follow him or not, they believe in him. And if you combine atheists and agnostics and you come up to 9%, that means 91% of the people in the USA believe in some kind of a God, whether it's the God of the Bible or it's the Muslim religion or some kind of religion. They agree that there's a God. So the atheists really are not really doing all that much. Even with all these arguments they've got out there and how logical they think they are and everything, they're not doing a whole lot in the way of converting people. As a matter of fact, most of the people that I see in the comment section that are arguing, usually if I'm arguing back and forth with them, they're people that were already unbelievers and they just come in there and they flock together to stand with them. But getting back to what I was noticing about Brandon, something it didn't occur to me. I assumed that him and his family were all atheists. I just figured they all were. I figured they deconverted together. But now I've come to find out from one of his videos that he actually came out and said that his wife is a Christian. And I don't know what it was about that, but it kind of hit me a little harder than just the general idea of this man trashing God and doing these videos and, in just a general sense of putting this out there, trying to encourage people who are deconstructing. When I realized that him and his wife weren't even in agreement, which I guess if you think about it logically makes sense, because he said he had been a Christian for 30 years, and I guess he married a Christian woman and has children with her. And so, but again, when I started thinking about this, I was thinking about it from the standpoint of, he was saying how that there's all these people out there talk about how that they pray for him, to be saved again. And he had this one video out there where that he said there were people that said that he was an exception to that about being saved. He can't be saved because he had been a Christian, he had fallen away, and now he can no longer be saved. And he was talking about how that that doesn't seem to fit the type of God that people preach about. Because if God wouldn't take somebody back when all these Christian people are praying for him, and if he were to change his mind and sincerely seek God, that God wouldn't take him back. So, it didn't seem like a very loving and caring God. And I do want to just give you my opinion of that real quick here before I continue on. I believe that in theory, he could return to God today if he would repent for what he's been doing, basically being an evangelist for the devil. He's not going to agree with that, but that's what he is. I was sitting there watching one of his videos on Sunday, and I was thinking, that Satan himself could be sitting there in that seat saying these things. And Satan himself comes as an angel of light. He didn't come with horns, and he doesn't come looking wicked and all of that. He comes as an angel of light. And here you have this soft-spoken, easy-going type person who wants you to think he's just such a moral man and all that. That's the way he comes to you. But if you listen to him, he's like he's preaching for the devil. He's attacking God throughout this video that he was doing. Well, what I was going to say is, he could, in theory, come back to God. And I believe God would accept him back if he would. However, what happens is, if you cross the line where that you have made it clear that you do not want to follow God, and this guy has made it clear that he doesn't like God, he doesn't consider God good, he just attacks things that God has done, and he doesn't like him. He's talked about how that some people say if you go to hell, you sent yourself there, and he's saying that he wouldn't go to hell of his own choice. He acted like he didn't care that much about what heaven says. It says about heaven in the Bible, but of course he'd prefer it over hell. Well, that's common sense if it's one or the other, and you don't want to be tortured forever. Now, I've seen some of these crazy atheists like to make these little comments for shock value that if I had to spend all of eternity in heaven with Christians, I'd rather go to hell, they'll say. Well, that's just because they don't believe in hell. But when they get there, they're going to have a different opinion of that. But that's what they'll say today. But he's just looking at it from a standpoint of what he'd rather do, because he's smart enough to know he doesn't want to be tortured forever. So if hell was a real place, he doesn't really want to go there. But when we talk about somebody sending themselves there, the point is, by his choices, he is choosing to do things that are going to guarantee that he's going to spend eternity in hell. And it's not because God didn't make a way. And I'll say this too, Brandon, in case by some miracle you see this video. You're not this innocent victim or this innocent person who just lost his faith. You're not getting any sympathy from me on that, for sure. You didn't just lose your faith. You had opened yourself up to listen to a bunch of people out there telling you things that God's not real, that he can't, these stories in the Bible couldn't have happened because of X, Y, or Z or whatever. And you choose to believe these people. Now, I would have to ask why you choose to believe them, because they can't prove what they're saying. Now, you're going to say that they can prove it. I'm going to say that they can't, because over the last 3 years plus, I have been looking into their claims. And yes, there is some little bits of evidence here and there for some of their things, but when it comes down to the drastic type of evolution that would be necessary for us to exist, no, they don't have mountains of evidence for that. And not only that, but I was even having discussions with somebody who knows about the Big Bang and knows about all these different things. And we were discussing the scientific theories of it. I wanted an expert to tell me all about the Big Bang and what the scientists believe and how they came to their conclusions. And he was telling me all about it, even how they believe that the universe is still expanding and how they come up with these conclusions based on different colors in the stars. You know, he's talking about them like when they're moving away, they're moving over to this red zone or something or other. He went into explanations about all these different things, and he went into explanations about DNA and shared DNA and all this kind of stuff. But when we had been talking for a while, I asked him point blank, I said, that I know what you're telling me is the scientific conclusions. But I said, let me ask you this. Their conclusions, these are the ones being made based on the idea that there's no intelligent design. But now let's say that we were coming from the idea of intelligent design. And my personal theory that there is an old earth, that there are unique creations that God made of different ages that go together. And we happen to be in the one that started in Genesis, and it's recorded for us, Genesis to Revelation. And that these dinosaurs and all those things were part of a completely different creation that wasn't part of the one we're in. It was a different world. And that at a certain point in time, the Creator, God, completely wiped out every single living thing and started all over again in Genesis. There weren't like a certain percentage that were survived or whatever and somehow or another evolved, but they were completely wiped out and God started over. And I said, let's suppose that he's done this multiple times and that the earth is very old. I said, could that explain it? And he said, yes, theoretically that could explain the evidence that they have. Even the DNA, if we believe that when the Creator started over, that he didn't start over completely from scratch, but things that he had used originally that worked, he used the same thing in his new creations. He said, yes, that could be a possibility, and that there actually are people that believe that. But there are people that are believing in intelligent design, and they're not accepted by the mainstream scientists. But yes, they are out there. There are people that have had this same type of theories. And that's something that I've been pointing out. They do not have any proof that these things they're saying prove God doesn't exist. They do not. And all of these things that Brandon keeps bringing up about so-called contradictions in the Bible, they're not contradictions, especially the one in Genesis. That's one of the easiest ones in the world where I've been able to. I've never once seen that as a contradiction or two different views. I've always seen one as kind of an overview and one of them filling in more details. And it was as simple as that. And all of these things that Brandon comes in here with, and he keeps saying that they prove the Bible can't be relied on or that God's not real. They do no such thing. And then all this stuff about God not being moral or God not being good or whatever. These stories we have heard. I've known these stories since I was young. The one about Noah wiping out everything with a flood. Who hasn't heard that before? Who doesn't know about the children of Israel going in and conquering the land of Canaan? We've all heard these stories before. There's nothing new here. But they act like they want to come in with their own kind of spin on it. And then they want to make God look like this terrible monster. Then for some reason, they like to keep bringing up the idea that God didn't condemn slavery, like that's supposed to prove some kind of immorality. Well, let me again say something that I believe as somebody who does believe in logic. If you're an animal, there is no such thing as evil, Brandon. If you're an animal, we don't look at animals as being held to standards of good and evil and moral and immoral. I brought this up before. One animal kills another animal. We don't charge them with murder. One male cat forces a female cat. We don't charge them with some kind of sexual assault and lock them up in a cage. We don't do that. And so the whole idea of morality comes from a belief in something higher than us. Whether it be our Christian God or it's somebody else's religion, that's where it comes from. But if we're animals, there is no such thing as good and evil and moral and immoral. And that includes things like slavery, Brandon. So you want to talk logic? I'm talking logic now. Your arguments don't hold any water. But anyway, getting back to what I was saying earlier about his family, his friends, he didn't win any of them over. They're still in the Christian faith like so many others are. Thank God that his wife hasn't fallen for him, what he said. And I hope and pray his children, if they don't believe in God, I hope and pray that they do believe in God before it's eternally too late. And I'm going to tell you something, Brandon. It's not just you. This isn't just about you and your feelings and your personal fights out here on YouTube. It's about your children and where they're going to spend eternity too. And if you're wrong, Brandon, if they follow you, they're going to wind up in hell for eternity, and you're going to be to blame for it. So, well, I can't help the fact that I stopped believing. You can help what you're doing today. You can help being a preacher for Satan. You can help behaving the way you are and teaching this stuff when there is no way you can prove it. And your belief system is ridiculous. The person I was talking to, I asked him, I said, what are the odds of this expanding universe? He didn't want to use the term Big Bang. He was talking about expansion. But what are the odds of this expansion working out exactly the way it had to for everything to be the way it is? And he said the number was so ridiculously high, it was a number they couldn't even write on paper, the odds against it. Because in this expansion, one tiny thing being off just a little bit, and according to him, everything would have collapsed on itself because of the gravity and stuff. He said that when it came down to the odds of it, it was that minuscule that it could have worked out. And so this is the kind of stuff that Brandon is talking about is logical. His logic is, and he finds it more believable, we came from microscopic sea creatures than that we were created by intelligent design. I'm sorry, Brandon, but I don't think that's more logical. And as I pointed out on another video, my personality type is logician. I think it's only like 3% or something of the entire population. I look at everything through logic and reasoning. And I don't find your belief system logical at all. I find intelligent design makes a whole lot more sense. And I'll also tell you this. It really shouldn't come down to a battle between religion and science, because if the scientists would just simply accept the possibility of intelligent design, I don't think we should be fighting with each other over it. I think that we could work together, and because again, the theories that I believe are not going completely against a lot of the scientific discoveries, but they do go against the ones who deny God, and they want to say it's all some kind of natural process and has to be. It's nothing natural about what they're saying anyway. And the person I was discussing this with admitted that they don't really know what happened before the Big Bang. They can't really explain that. They've got a bunch of more theories that are at odds with each other, but nobody really knows. So anyway, ultimately it does come down to faith, but I do believe the Bible makes a whole lot more sense. And I do understand the idea of all these different religions, and I've heard all these arguments. I've got answers to all this stuff, Brandon, and I'm not going to be able to fit it in on one video today, but maybe I'll get around to trying to take on all these different points. You haven't given one. I've been watching you for a long time, Brandon. You haven't given me one point that I don't have an answer to. Nothing. And I can directly answer it. I don't mean just ignore it and just come back and just hit you with something. I mean, I can take your points on one by one and show how nothing you said disproves God. As a matter of fact, not only that, but the more that I've been listening to you atheists and deconstructionists, the stronger my faith is in God. The more I've looked into the so-called evidence, the more I believe in God. But anyway, you mentioned that your wife is a Christian. And I was thinking about some of the things you've said on the video I was just watching today. You called yourself unequally yoked. Well, that's the term for a Christian that is married to a non-believer. We're not, or to associate directly close friends and acquaintances with non-believers. That's called being unequally yoked together. And I guess that happened because you probably got together when you were both of the Christian faith. But you called yourself unequally yoked with her, and you were saying how that was a difficult thing, being unequally yoked. Well, it is. And I brought up on another video how that nothing good is coming of deconstruction. There's everything you talk about, all the hard things you have to deal with because of it, all that you're going through. You didn't have to go through that. You chose to go through that, Brandon. It's all your fault. And for what? You're giving up unity with family and friends, a hope of eternal life, and seeing them for being in heaven with them forever. You're giving that up for what? The hope that you're going to die one day and that's going to be the end. That's the best you've got. But you do that. You promote doing the hard work for what? To lose all your family and friends and have to start all over again? That was ridiculous. That to me is illogical. And you talk about harm of religion. There's no harm coming from religion any more than just living life. People do get hurt sometimes in church by people, but people get hurt outside the church too, just in normal relations with people. Friends hurt friends. Family members hurt friends or hurt other family members. So I'm like, what is this you're talking about, the harm of religion? You're going to say because they're intolerant of certain groups? Well, big deal. As I've said, if I don't believe in religion, I don't believe in God, I don't believe there is any moral or immoral or right or wrong or good or evil. So if I was to look down on minority groups or whatever types of situations, it wouldn't matter because morality is whatever I consider. If I thought slavery was okay, it'd be okay. So what's the harm coming from religion, Brandon? I've seen you say that more than once. So we're doing the hard work to escape the harm of religion. And I hear you talk about the heartache of the hurt of leaving religion. I don't know how in the world religion's hurting anybody more than what you're dealing with and the hurt you're inflicting on people. And then you say you're just, what are you supposed to be, like some kind of support group for other people deconstructing? That's your purpose, is to help those deconstructing. You're out here attacking God. You say that's all you're doing, but you are preaching against God. So what I was thinking about is some of the things you've said. You mentioned about being unequally yoked with your wife now. You compared what you've discovered through your deconstruction is becoming mature. And you compared leaving God to coming to a point of not believing in Santa Claus anymore. So then you turn around and another video, you talked about how somebody who gets free from drugs and they start thinking back fondly on the good feelings they had with their drugs, and that you still wouldn't be wise to go back to the drugs. So you comparing leaving religion to not returning to it again because it's like you escaped drug addiction. You actually made that comparison on one. You claim that your beliefs are as a result of logic. So therefore, you're calling everybody on the other side illogical. And you're fish to men stuff. You're microscopic sea creatures to everything that exists. That's not logical to me. Not at all. You attack God constantly is not good. You say all kind of evil things about him. And you also admit on a video that your wife is a Christian and prays to this God that you are beating up week after week after week, or even multiple times a week on your program. So what does that say about how you look? You let us know how you look at Christians. You see yourself as superior. You're intellectually superior to us superstitious, ignorant Christians. You've already said that. Well, that includes your wife. And I'm like, how must she feel about your program? Does she actually ever see any of your Mindshift program? And again, why is it that is your wife? Do you think your wife is beneath you intellectually? Do you think she's dumb? You at one time you must have thought something of her. You married her. So I'm just like, it really makes me sad. I actually felt sad. I was thinking about people were praying for you to come back to the faith. And I was thinking within myself, yes, I would like to see you come back to the faith. I care about your soul. But I actually would be more wanting to pray for your wife who's having to go through what she's having to go through, because she's got a husband that when she got married to you, I'm sure you weren't unequally yoked. She didn't have any idea what she was getting into. And now she has to deal with a husband who sees her as beneath him, because she's still over there believing in the equivalent of Santa Claus, while you've evolved, but she stayed back there. You've done it you've said it about all the rest of us. She's lumped in too. She's a Christian, isn't she? I feel bad for her, and I feel bad for your children, because I care about their souls. So yes, Brandon, I believe you could come back to God if God's not through dealing with you. But you made your choice. Yes, you did. You chose the deconstruction route. You chose to listen to all these people with their goofy theories, and you call that logical. You chose the way and the path that you're on. So don't blame anybody but you. If you wind up in hell, it's your fault. And as far as, again, I pray for your wife. I pray for her that God will keep her strong, and that she will make it to heaven one day, that she'll stand firm in her beliefs. And I pray for your children, that they won't follow your ways, but they'll follow her ways, and that they'll all at least make it to heaven. And after that, I pray that if God would, for their sake, because of your wife, because of her faith, I do pray that for her sake, that you'll get your faith back, that God will give you another chance. After the things you've said about God, I don't blame him for whatever punishment he inflicts on you. But at the same time, I do care about your soul, just like I care about everybody's soul. So yes, Brandon, I do pray that you come back to the faith. And yes, Brandon, I do believe that if you could ever come to a place of repentance, you could get back. But you'd have to completely acknowledge you're wrong. You'd have to publicly confess Christ again. If you do that, yes, I believe you could come back. The way you talk, I don't see any sorrow about anything you're doing. You seem to double down on your atheism. That's your choice. That's what it talks about in Romans. You choose not to retain God in your knowledge, so he gives you over to a reprobate mind. That is your fault, because you choose not to retain God in your knowledge. But if you want to come back, Brandon, come back. But I don't know how much more time you're going to have. So the choice is up to you. As far as all this stuff about predestination, all that stuff, yes, I can discuss that with you. I don't have time here. I don't want this video to go over half an hour, so I'm going to cut it off here. But yes, Brandon, I believe you could come back if you want to come back. Just like the prodigal son, yes, I believe God will take you back if you will repent and you will confess Christ again. That's all I want to say on today's program. If you're not a subscriber to my channel, I want to invite you to subscribe. And until the next video, take care, everyone.